I'm John Dennis. I'm running against Nancy Pelosi.
We have the most beautiful state and one of the most beautiful places in the world, and people are leaving.
I'm gonna catch you when all the cameras aren't around, and I'm gonna you up. I'm tired.
He's the chairman of the San Francisco GOP, and he's running against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
Step back, everyone.
Boy, excuse me. God knows what. Come on in. It's Tuesday, May 25th, 2021, and had a late lunch today. I'm gonna vamp here for a few seconds, let you all come in the room. So we're only running up on YouTube Live. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. So. Just bear with me. I want to see if there are any comments that come in. And there we go. So I had here's what I'm gonna do right now. I'm gonna be a city snob for a second. And this is one of the reasons why people listen. I get it if you don't like cities, and get it if you definitely don't like definitely get it if you don't like San Francisco, although, had you moved here when I did, you'd be thrilled with it if you like cities. But so one of the things people like about cities is, you get to meet interesting people convene, talent comes together, they put together projects, all kinds of stuff like that. Also in bigger cities, you tend to have a more, cosmopolitan situation where you get to meet people from lots of different cultures. That's interesting in and of itself. And I've lived in a bunch of places. I've traveled to, I don't know, I think I've been to like 70 countries or so. So I like that. That's really exciting. And then, of course, because of that, there's great food. And there's great food from all over the place. Just because there's, by the way, a broad representation of different types of food doesn't mean it's all very good. So, for example, I don't know, Indian food is probably better in London than it is in San Francisco, although we've got pretty good Indian food here. But one thing that we have here that's amazing is Chinese food, and because we have got a really big Chinese community. In fact, I'm just checking out something. What's the name of that chain? Oh, PF Chang's. So I just had a dish that was so good. And it's just not something that I've had anywhere else. It just can't be replicated. It doesn't seem to be. And when like PF Chang's makes a version of this, which is, frankly, just to call it a version of it is kind of sad. It's sort of a poor imitation of it. I'm actually looking for it right now. And people, people don't know. I mean, if you're not from here or from a place that has these kinds of things, you don't know. And so that's one of the reasons why people say, "Why do you stay in San Francisco?" There are a million different things. I mean, it's a great city, great weather for somebody who came from the East Coast, where the weather is really, extreme, relatively speaking. It's very moderate here, although we've had a kind of a coldish year. The landscape, the topography is just gorgeous, just a beautiful place. There are stunning views from all over the place. Great people come here. So many amazing things. And so that's why, why we stay. Lots of opportunities. Like, for example, my daughter, she's a little blonde kid. My wife is from Nebraska. Our daughter speaks Chinese because she was able to go to a Chinese immersion school. It's the sort of thing you don't get in different places, and it's a unique experience. So anyway, that's why we stay. And then now, and from this live stream, and of course all the media, know the reasons why people leave here, because the Democrats, who own this problem, because Republicans have not run San Francisco for decades, 6 decades. Democrats have run the city into the ground. And anyway, that's what we're trying to change. Okay, let me move to the first topic. I had a nice conversation today with Rand Paul just a couple of hours ago. And he was running a little late because he had a vote on the floor of the Senate. And I don't want to divulge all the entire conversation, but we did talk a bit about present politics, and he was just on Fox News with Martha McCallum, basically saying the same things to her that he was saying to me, and it revolved around the fact that he is not going to get vaccinated. Now, keep in mind, first of all, something about Rand drives the left absolutely mental. I mean, crazy. Yesterday, if you followed me here, you noticed that I was talking about Richard Marx, the musician who had some big hits in, I think, the late 80s, early 90s. Was like Bette Midler. They were, sort of glorifying the guy who attacked Rand Paul. The left constantly threatens him online. It's crazy. They've threatened him in public. They surrounded him and his wife last summer in Washington, D.C. after an event at the White House. And there's something about him that they really want to go after. But in any event, they got really mental over the last couple of days because Rand said that he's not going to take the vaccine. Now, keep in mind that Rand is a doctor. Rand went to Duke Medical School, which I don't know if you look it up, it's ranked sometime in the top 10 medical schools in the country. Went to Baylor University, and has been a practicing ophthalmologist for decades. And not only that, but was an emergency room physician, doing shifts when his local hospitals needed it. So, I mean, he's a practicing physician. He knows medicine. He knows science. And he said he's not getting the vaccine. And he just said on Martha McCallum's show, which he just also said to me a few hours ago, the same thing, which is that, if you have had COVID, he was infected with COVID. If you had COVID, we're talking about the timing of that infection because he got it not long after he was here in San Francisco in my car for like 3 hours, but okay. I didn't get sick. But he, he's saying if you've been infected, you shouldn't get the vaccine. And I said to him something that I don't think came up in the Martha McCallum show. You're not supposed to get the vaccine after you've been sick. I said to him, don't you run the risk of getting really sick if you get a vaccine? And he jumped right on that. He was like, oh, if you get a vaccine after you've been infected with that thing for which you're getting vaccinated, you can get sick to the tune of like 1,000 times worse than the actual disease itself, the virus itself, the infection itself. Can you imagine? You can get 1,000 times sicker if you take the vaccine after you already have the antibodies because you've already been infected with it. So it's a terrible idea to get the vaccine. And the truth of the matter is that we nationally should have much more robust antibody testing prior to people getting vaccinated. Like, I went and got the vaccine, but I also had the suspicion that I got COVID at one point. And I didn't feel great after I got the vaccine. The truth is, I got the vaccine probably damn near 2 months ago, a while back. My stomach is sort of still felt funny has felt funny ever since, and it still now feels a little weird. I wonder if I got it. And then I got the infection. But the point is that we should have antibody tests, and people should only go after they've had the antibodies. Rand made another point, too. India is having a terrible outbreak. People, just having a terrible time. One of the reasons why they're having a terrible outbreak is because they've got a shortage of vaccines. Well, instead of giving vaccines to people like Rand Paul who have already had the disease and have the antibodies, why not, test people here for antibodies, and instead of, giving them shots with the vaccine. How about sending those vaccines over to someplace like India, which is having a problem right now? He just made that point on Martha McCallum. So anyway, a few other interesting things with him. I don't want to get into specifics, but it does bother me that for some reason the left feels like it's entirely acceptable to threaten him. And I've got to put this out there. I'm going to put it out on Twitter in a little bit that, people, why is the left, why aren't leaders on the left saying, hey, listen, don't threaten this guy, don't threaten anybody? Like, why is it that the right is constantly saying, we don't do threats, we don't do violence, but the left, the leaders on the left never say this? I made this very same point a year ago on Laura Ingram's show, and I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to put it out there on Twitter right after this live stream, so keep an eye out for that. Okay, moving on. BLM. So today is the anniversary of the terrible word. Today it's 1 year since George Floyd was, died in Minneapolis. I don't want to say he was killed, although I suppose that is true. But I have to say, some issues with Derek Chauvin, of course, and I didn't follow that trial probably as closely as I should have, but I still also feel like there's a bit more to that story than just Derek Chauvin just killed the guy. I mean, Floyd had a lot of stuff going on. He had drugs in his system. He had a lot going on, and he was in a compromised position. So anyway, he died, and it was a tragedy. It was a terrible thing that happened. But having said that, at this point, you would think there's a phrase that has been said quite a bit by BLM folks: systemic racism. Systemic racism, that the policing in this country is completely smothered in systemic racism. That the system is systemic racism. Systemically racist. It's so bad, in fact, that they've come up with the phrase defund the police. Okay, so we're talking about defunding the police because it's so bad. Now, if the system is so bad and it's so evident, then it would be easy to list all the things that people, the police do that are biased against black people in general, and specific and minorities in general. Because that's what BLM says. BLM is saying Black Lives Matter because this system, this policing system, acts as if black lives don't matter. That's effectively what they're saying. So it must be pretty easy to point out then how the system is biased against black people. And in fact, if those biases are so clear, then it ought to be easy to draw up legislation that suppresses those issues that make the system, or get rid of those issues or those practices that make the system biased against black people. But here we are a year later, and there's been one piece of legislation that's been presented or suggested. In fact, I don't think it's made it to the floor. It's called the Justice for All Act. And in fact, can you pull that up, Mario? Let's pull it up. Justice for All Act. It's on Wikipedia. So here we are a year later, and not only is it a year later, but the Democrats have controlled the House, effectively controlled the Senate, and on this issue would have support from several Republicans, many Republicans, in fact, depending on what they proposed. Justice for All Act. Yeah, there you go. No, what is this one? To go to the one on top. Crime Victims' Rights Act. What's that one? No, that's not it. See if you can find it. Keep looking. I saw it this morning, and when we pull it up, you'll see why we're doing that. Put Barbara Jordan Justice Act. Oh yeah, this is it. This is the one. No, that's environmental justice for all. Put Barbara Jordan Justice Act. Wiki. So yeah, you would think, I don't know, it'd be pretty straightforward. But Nancy Pelosi has been in charge of the House. Joe Biden's been president. Sympathies, a Democrat Senate with sympathies clearly from folks on the Republican side of the aisle, and yet they haven't introduced any legislation. There it is, Barbara Lee. That's the one. No, is that it? No. Anyway, we'll find it. I saw it this morning. This is the truth is that we're having a hard time finding it because you would think that this would have already passed, but there's nothing out there right now that hey, you know what you can do? Go to Nancy Pelosi's Twitter feed, and she reposted. I think it was Barbara Jordan or Barbara Lee. One of them posted something. Go to at Speaker Pelosi, and yeah, I mean, you would think they would have an act. They have nothing up there. So what does that tell you? I don't know. Seems like they would be able to point out the if it's a systemic racism problem, you'd think they'd be able to pin that down, but apparently not. Sorry, I'm kind of vamping here a little bit. It was. Hold on, go back up. Maybe it was. Justice and Policing Act. That's it. Justice and Policing. Do a search on that. No, it's already automatically Googled there. So anyway, I mean, so the point is that if you go through when you go through, if you go through these points, there you go. So let's post this up. It's right there. There you go. It's named after George Floyd. There it is. All right, let's post this. So, hold on. Here are the provisions. So the provisions are, and if you go through them, there are, police have to wear body cameras. Gives the civil rights division the right to issue subpoenas to police. Gives powers to the state's attorney general. Dashboard cams. Restrict the transfer of military equipment to police. Prohibit chokeholds. Prohibit no-knock warrants. Mandate that federal officers use deadly force only as a last resort. I mean, what is the, first of all, this is sort of micromanaging from the federal level on many of these issues. That's completely unnecessary, superfluous, and probably dangerous in many circumstances and instances. To stop the cops from using chokeholds is ridiculous. I mean, you get into a fight with somebody, a life and death fight with an alleged criminal, and the police have two choices: choke the guy out and render him unconscious so that that they can restrain him, or follow the law and don't put a chokehold on him. What are you, crazy? In the middle of that moment, a cop is gonna follow this stupid law? Okay, whatever. So anyway, if you look at all these things, there's nothing here. There's actually just one kind of minor point here that has anything to do with race. And by the way, it's such a kind of a weak thing that, they passed it in the House, but it's just sitting in the Senate and it's not moving forward. And I don't know, it just seems like if it was a simple problem, that they would be able to go in and you know, and identify. And by the way, again, none of these issues, these provisions in the bill, really address the supposed you know, racist element of the police and the systemic racism of policing in the United States. So what does that tell you? It tells you that a lot of people are revving up a lot of other folks for one end, and that end is to, you know, to lead people. And in those circumstances, it's the leaders who actually end up the ones who benefit the most. And as a result, you see the leaders of organizations like Black Lives Matter buying real estate empires, you know? And the truth is that I've been saying this for a while. Scott Adams this morning said it on his live stream, but I've been saying, if we spent, here's my way of saying this, if we spent more time, or at least as much time, focusing on teaching success skills to minority communities, as we do teaching them garbage like CRT, minority communities would be in a much better position than they are now. Instead, what we're doing is we're telling them that they can't succeed because the system is rigged against them, which is utter and complete bullshit. It's total bullshit. In fact, today, if you're a minority, there are so many people, Republicans across the board, want to see everyone succeed. Because here's what we know. We understand economics. First of all, we're decent people who want to see other people thrive. But as it turns out, when other people thrive, they raise the you know, it's a rising tide that raises all boats. When you have fewer people who are, you know, have more people who are capable, they are more productive and they create a better quality of life for everybody, not just themselves. So Republicans want minorities to succeed. We don't want to see, you know, people lagging behind. The Democrats, on the other hand, who control the votes from the minority communities, they have a vested interest in seeing that minorities don't succeed. They have a vested interest in, frankly, keeping minorities down. And that's the truth. And, you know, listen, I can say these things because it's not getting a gigantic audience for it, but I don't really care. That's the truth of the matter. So anyway, we are hurting. We are seeing, I have nothing to do with it. You and I have nothing to do with it. But the black community is being hurt by Black Lives Matter. It's being hurt by the Democrats. I've talked about this a lot before. If they, again, have these black leaders talk about training and teaching people success habits, and instead of this nonsense like CRT, and watch the black community and minority communities thrive. They want to. Listen, I grew up in a poor community. We were one of the last white families to move out of a public housing project in Jersey City. And I can tell you now, there weren't a lot of people teaching success habits in those places. You know, you got them obliquely through sports and through other, you know, other activities and that sort of thing. But the specifics of teaching success habits was something I actually learned much later. And if we started teaching kids that earlier, then perhaps you know, some of these communities would be better off. And I can assure you that once they're better off, they will reject the Democrats. Anyway, on that note, let's move on to let's real quickly. By the way, let's go to that. Yeah, go to that one. You know, today, not terribly ironically. In the middle of celebrating the George Floyd anniversary, there was a guy giving a news report, and from the folks who brought you Defund the Police, we had this little incident happen. So this guy's giving you a news
comprehensive
report.
Police reform to be.
By the way,
just got to be careful here with
3,
some gunshots. Excuse
4,
us.
and now it's just an explosion of gunshots. This is happening at George Floyd Square.
It sounds.
By the way,
like
how about this
I don't know what
guy?
this is.
You know, just standing
These seem
up.
to be gunshots.
How is it guys like that survive? In any event, that's what defunding the police looks like. That's the kind of lifestyle that Black Lives Matter wants to bring to the United States. Okay, let's dismiss that. I'm done with that. All right, let's move on to the last little bit of topic. This is actually just kind of a fun thing. And what's interesting about this is, by the way, here's a younger Dianne Feinstein who must have been running for mayor. She ran for mayor in 71, and then I think again in 75. And 71, she would have been about 38 years old. I gotta say, she's sort of attractive, huh? At this, at this stage, very light color eyes, nice looking. Had that weird sort of like post. Her hair is sort of stuck in the late 1950s, early 1960s, but okay, whatever. Running for mayor. And let me just tell you a quick story. I know a guy who had dinner with her, 4 people at this table, and Dianne Feinstein, if most people know, is very anti-gun. She's a big gun control nut. People see her as a moderate, willing to talk with people on the other side of the aisle. I think that's a deserved reputation. Maybe not as reasonable as people think, but in this area, in terms of gun control, she is, one of the leaders in being a gun grabber. At dinner one time, this guy, who I know, said to her, "But Dianne, don't you understand that the reason why people want to keep guns is because they're concerned about having a tyrannical government that runs amok, gets out of control, and they need to be held in check." And Feinstein looked at him and then turned away to the person sitting next to her at the restaurant and said, "Will you tell that person that he's out of his fucking mind?" So that's Dianne Feinstein on guns. But now listen to this funny little clip from when she's running for mayor. And by the way, tell me what she sounds like and who she sounds like. You ready?
You have an iron gate or a deadbolt lock on your door, or a big dog for protection and are still afraid, then you and I know that this is not a safe city. As mayor, I'm going to give you the most effective police department in America. I'm going to serve notice on the mugger, the pusher, the thief. We're going to break the back of violent crime once and for all in this city. So don't believe that a woman isn't tough enough to lead San Francisco.
She sort of sounds like a Republican. And so here's my tweet. If you ran for mayor of San Francisco now and say what Feinstein just said when she ran in the 70s, you'll get canceled or you'll win in a landslide. One of the two, I can't really tell. I mean, I think people really crave it, but I don't, for those who don't know, I mean, the 70s got a little weird in San Francisco. I mean, things got a little out of control for a while. And there was some division. There was some racial division. There were people out there who were like shooting people and like, just like to make a political point. And things were getting a little out of control, sort of like right now. And Feinstein, Democrat, was, willing to say that she'd get tough on criminals and that sort of thing. I can tell you no candidate who is, no, that's not true. But people wouldn't talk this way. Even the people who are supposedly tough on crime, running for mayor, they wouldn't talk this way. Not now. So I can't tell. I think there's an appetite for this. And I think the candidate who is, has some name recognition and can raise some money and talks about this, that he or she's going to crack down on crime in the face of a resistant board of supervisors, is going to be a viable candidate for mayor, which is next year in 2020. I take that back, in 2 years in 2023. So, but I just find this whole thing interesting that Dianne Feinstein, who is a gun grabber and who is a Democrat, was all law and order when she ran for mayor. It's a big difference, by the way, being a U.S. senator and being the executive of anything for that matter. And even that's what the mayor is, an executive, somebody who has to, balance a budget, run a city, make sure that life is safe for people. It's a different game than being some philosopher king who is in a cushy club like the U.S. Senate. And by the way, if you've never been in a senator's office, you go there and you look at their lifestyle and how they do things there. Senate is a kind of a nice gig, man. It's really nice. They have tons of free time. And they work hard. It's not to say they don't, because they also constantly working to get reelected. But it's much different than being the executive of a city or a state. And you have to talk like this. You have to give people confidence that they're going to be able to live, with some safety. And but you can imagine that you would not hear Dianne Feinstein talk like this today. Very few Democrats would. In any event, I thought that was fun and interesting, and I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, please go ahead and punch that subscribe button and the like button on YouTube, and please make sure to follow us here, and then also on Instagram and on Twitter at @RealJohnDennis. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you Thursday live. We may have some content for you here on the YouTube channel tomorrow, so go ahead and make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow, by the way, I'm going to an event. It's the second recall effort that's actually going to, I think, surpass the first recall effort. I think the first recall effort against Chesa Boudin, who is the Soros-backed district attorney in San Francisco. There are a couple of recall efforts ongoing. Looks like the first one is going to fade, not make it to the finish line, but there's a stronger second one that's kicking off tomorrow. I'll go to that. I might actually live stream that from one of these platforms. We'll see how it goes, but either way, I'll keep you posted and let you know what I'm seeing. In any event, until then, have a great day. Have a great couple of days, and we will see you live on Thursday. All the best.